Hello, this is Mike at GameFromScratch, and welcome to another Godot-related post. The last one we just did was to show you the new experimental visual scripting interface coming soon in Godot, while another major release just happened is Godot 2.1 was just released. Now, Godot 2.1 is no surprise. RC1 and RC2, the two release candidates, have been happening the last couple weeks, to get ready for this release. But it is finally here. And today what we're going to do is talk about exactly what is actually in this release. Now, this isn't an earth-shattering release. This kind of stuff that's in here isn't major, massive new features, but if you work and use Godot now, you're going to love this release because it's a lot of just usability stuff that just makes Godot nicer to work with. And we'll go through most of this list in turn and see what is now in there. Also, if you're a non-English speaker, you're going to love this release because you can make your experience much nicer in your native language. Now, without further ado, let's jump on in. Now, if you've never used Godot before, this video is probably not for you. I am not explaining what Godot is all about. I'm just looking at the changes specifically. However, I've done videos in the past. Here's an introduction to Godot, and then I did one, here's updates to 2.0. So if you want an idea of what Godot is, check my channel. Both of those are there. I will link them down below. So if you want to, get up to speed on Godot, those videos are probably for you. This is more about what's new in the 2.1 release specifically. Now let's start off with probably the biggest new feature, which doesn't bring a whole lot to the table yet, but is really planting the seeds for something new: the asset store. Store is a misnomer because everything in there is free, but it is the asset library. Now, as you can see here, we can bring up a particular entry. So here is a logger GD script singleton I could download. You can see a preview of what it is. I click here to install it, and down it comes. Or the other one released right now is this group manager. Now, this is laying the framework for the ability to share code, to be able to share editor settings, etc., in a centralized place. So you can see here the previews, you can see a video of it in action, etc. So very young. There's obviously not a lot here. The categories haven't come into place, but as people start releasing new tools, new plugins, new modules, etc., for Godot, you're now going to be able to download them and integrate them directly within the editor using this new asset library. So basically think Unity Asset Store, just built directly in and not as a commercial platform. So this is a very cool new feature, but it's going to take some time for it to actually get populated. But that is definitely the biggie of this release. Another one that kind of came with it, I can't really easily show you here, and it goes together with this guy right here. But there is now a new plugin interface. So I'm going to go over to script. The best thing I can probably show you is the class. I believe it's called editor plugin. So there's now this new support for or module or plugin stuff. So you can now easily create plugins, and this is to create it using GD script directly within Godot. You could always write plugins using C++, but they required an extra link build cycle. They were a bit harder to integrate. Now you can create them right in Godot, make them kind of just like you would a scene or any other asset. And this is provided. You can come on here and look at it's the editor plugin documentation we're looking at here. You can see the various different hooks that it's got into different parts of the Godot engine. So you can create new nodes, you can extend editors, etc. Again, that is going to work together with this asset library to make extending Godot and sharing your work much more accessible. Now, it's not sexy stuff, but it is planting the seeds for some very cool things coming in the future. Now, another thing that's coming soon, or actually, sorry, that's here now, is new TTF dynamic font support. Now, until now, what used to be is you could bring in, or I could come up here to go import, and I could say font, and I could bring in a TTF font. And what this would do is basically create a bitmap font for me of a fixed size. Now, this works if you're in an environment where you can have a fixed size font. Now, what happens if you're not? What happens if you want to support dynamic fonts? Well, this is suddenly a little bit trickier. Well, so now there's this new dynamic font option. You can bring in a TTF or OTF file format font. For example, I have, let me just bring this over here. I have this TTF font. I took it from the Windows font directory, but TTF files are available everywhere. It's basically the standard for font files. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm also going to jump ahead a little bit here and show you something that, oops, all right, why do I not have, all right, I have focus. All right, so what I'm going to do here is open up basically I'm just opening up the directory that my project is in, and I spoiled a feature there, so don't worry, I'll come back to it in a second. And I just want to go over here to this, bring that TTF file over here, and I'll copy it into this folder like so. So now that TTF file, boom, live update. So you can see it right here. It's in our resources. It automatically copied in and is now available to us. So I get this TTF file to use in our project now. So what I'm going to do is go back to my scene here, go back to 2D mode. Very simple scene. It's very empty, nothing really special going on here. I'm just going to go ahead and create a new, we'll create a label. Let's create a label like so. And what we're doing is creating a dynamic font label. So come down here. So you see my label's created. Text here is all your font is belong to us. Like so. And now what I want to do is create a dynamic font using this TTF file instead of actually creating the bitmap font format. Just come on down here to the font section right here, custom font, tick it to yes, and edit and say new dynamic font. Just click new, and then let's go ahead and edit that guy. And for the font, go ahead and load it, pick our TTF file, and done. So now what I can do here is I can change my size. Let's say instead I want this to be 42, and complete. So now bringing in TTF and using TTF files, fonts is much easier. Now where you're going to really shine for using TTF files as opposed to, say, bitmap font files is when you start again getting into different languages, internationalization. There's an area where TTF works better. Now you're also probably going to, and I don't know how much of a big deal this is going to be, but you'll generally probably find that the existing system is faster. So using a bitmap font to blit it like you would any other sprite is probably faster than this dynamic font. Now I'm speaking out my ass here, but I'm going to assume there is a penalty or an overhead for using this. So if you don't need it, don't use it. But if you do need TTF support, this one is a nice new feature here. And if you want to, you can also have a fallback to the existing, to another kind of font here. So I could come back here and have a different font fallback. Now, on the topic of internationalization, that is probably the biggie in this release for non-English speakers. Now, English speakers don't really give a damn because the editor works really great. So, scene, import, all the tools, all the hot, the hover text, etc., are all available in English, which is fine by me. But now, if you are not English speaker, you come in here, you'll notice global. You see editor language up here. Well, now we've got options. So EN obviously is English. I don't know my country codes that well, but I can see German, Spanish, French, Italian, Japanese, etc. Now these are not all fully done. They're actually being done open source. Damn, I closed the, nope, it's right there. Okay, good. They're being done as an open source project. They're being translated here on the weblate.org, so you can see the different, and if you want to contribute to these translations, this is the site that does it, and this is where the translations are being pulled from. But you can see the most established ones here right now are Chinese, Chinese, French, German's about halfway there, Italian is done, Korean is done, Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese is done, Russian is done, Spanish is done, and Argentinian Spanish is done. So you've got some very solid translations already done. And if you want to come here and help translate to these other different languages, the various ones that you saw here in the UI, they're also available. Now I'm not going to switch this over just in case I screw it up and I can't get it back. But what this will do is basically change all of the texts in Godot to your language of choice. So again, if you're an international guy, you're going to probably love that particular feature. Now, well, since we're here already, here is my big feature. HDTI support is here. So high definition displays are, it looked like crap on them for the most part, and now it scales up. So you can set it to automatic. We can set it either to auto, low DPI, or high DPI. And this is basically going to cause, if you've got a 4K display, things were really, really, really tiny. So now this will oversample it, so it renders up and it looks good and clean on your monitor. So if, like me, you're running a Windows machine with high DPI, or you're a Mac running a Retina display, this is a nice new feature. But while we're here, we're going to talk about a lot of the other stuff that's been happening here. And there is now a ton of customizability. Like a ton. Pretty much everything you want to customize is now customizable. So that's a big thing in this release. So you can change all the colors. You can change the background colors. You can change the theme out so that it was white instead of gray. And you can change all the fonts that you want to do, etc. So the entire thing is now so this is, you can see here, we're in the text editor. You can change all the different fonts, tab sizes, background colors, etc. Same for the various, so the 3D editor has the 2D editor, you can change the different colors, etc. So there is a lot more customizability in here. You can save those out, and I believe that they are aimed at being supported here in the Asset Lib store. So definitely some great customizability that has come to the editor. So if you don't like this dark look, you can now control that. And this actually is a big deal to me, because I'd like to see a non-dark version. Because I don't know if you've ever tried to work on an editor like this on a laptop outside during the day. That's when these dark displays start to really suck. So it's nice to be able to switch back and forth between a dark or a light contrast display. And we're going to have that ability now. So you'll be able to create and save things as you want them. Now, one thing that's been here for a bit, but you'll notice here we can switch this. You can change your layouts back and change it, or you can save your layout. And you can also install export. Oh no, that's unrelated. So anyways, you've got your ability to revert your editor changes, etc. very quickly if you do screw things up. You can export them out, and we'll be able to, again, share them in the Asset Library store. So if you'd like someone else's config, you're going to be able to share them. I'm not sure of the specific details behind that, but you should expect to see them coming soon. Now, another thing that's come in here, and this is going to be very tricky for me to display on this, so I'm just going to talk about it as opposed to display it, is now live editing is there. And this is really cool, especially for remote deployment. So now what you can do is actually run your code on another device. You can come up here to this guy. See this little icon right here? Well, if you click that, you can say deploy with remote debug. And the other thing you can do is sync the changes to the script and sync the changes to the scene. So as you make changes on your PC, it will update it on the device you're testing on. So it's going to really rapidly fix the build test cycle. So you'll be able to make changes, run it on your device, change it directly in code, and see it updated on your device. Now, your device, when you set these things up, when you set this remote debug up, it will automatically try to connect to the IP address of the machine you're developing on. So you're probably going to have a Wi-Fi connection. It's not going to work that well through, you can't just run 4G, etc. But as long as you're on the same network, it will talk over Wi-Fi to your development machine and update back and forth. So you can basically run on device but debug in your editor. Very, very powerful feature. And they've got basically live reload, which means as you make changes to your scene, etc., your code, it will update it on the device as it goes. So there's no build cycle that you'd see in a lot of different engines. So that's a really cool new feature, but unfortunately, it's hard for me to demonstrate on a video as it stands without getting a camcorder involved or a lot of post-editing. So that's a nice new feature here. Another one that they've done is the profiler and frame profiler. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that. So let's go. We'll click here. Oops. Yeah, here, let's set this guy up as the right project. That's also a new feature, which I really like. I think that was in 2.1. It might have been in 2.0, but it used to be you had to go into project settings, do your initial scene, etc. Now you just say, oh, you don't have one. Would you like to set this one? And you say yes, and now you're good to go. So that's a nice little small functionality change, but I like to see it. Now with this guy running, I can now come down here to debugger, and we'll go over here to profiler. And what we can do is we can basically just start profiling. Now, if you've never heard of it, profiling is basically performance measuring. Like, when you're doing laps at a track or whatever, and they're tracking the time, well, that's exactly what profile is doing. And this is basically, it's running our very, 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 very simple, boring-ass game over and over and over again. And this is catching, so you can see here, it's on frame 1700, 1800, etc. And I'll stop profiling. And you'll see as it went through, this is the last 500 frames that it's done. And you can... Again, my example here is super simple. There's nothing to my code, but we can scrub through all the various different frames. So you can see I'm jumping through the frames. So you can see something happen here. We can go through, and you'll see here's how long that frame took to actually perform, how the whole amount of time it took. And you can jump in now and drill down. You can see how the physics is doing. And if I had any script functions, they would actually show up here. I don't. So, if I had like a knit or a render or update my game or various different functions in my code, which is completely non-existent in this demonstration, you would see them here under script functions. So now you can profile exactly how long is elapsed, how much time is spent in each particular function. So it's a really good way to figure out if you've got a slowdown going on, the profiler will help you find it. Now, remote scene inspector. Yeah, that's not really something I can demonstrate. IDPI, we already covered that. Now we're going to get back to the usability stuff, and this is going to be some pretty major stuff. This is actually really nice. Now let's say in my node here, I want to go ahead and create another node. Well, you notice how I just went, I clicked my parent node here and I clicked plus. Well, what we can now do is come up here to my node and right click. Yes, Godot finally has right click context menus. It's a little thing, but it is, I don't know, it pissed me off it didn't have it, so I love to see that it's there now. It's the little thing that will, you know, maybe save you 2 seconds, 3 seconds here, 5 seconds, 10 seconds there, but that adds up if you're using this guy full time, all the time. And now I'm gonna go ahead and add another child node, and I'll just make it, I'll make it a node. And we'll call this one child. And I'm gonna go ahead and rename my root node there to parent. Now let's say I don't like this particular arrangement anymore. This used to be a very convoluted process to reparent. Now, let's see. Oh, I can't, can I not? Okay, damn it. Well, I can do it that way. So the root node's still screwed up, but you see here, I can bring that guy back up. I can parent down there. So you can now do drag and drop. Now drag and drop doesn't end here though. I'm using my fingers, I'm pointing at the monitor. That doesn't help you much. Let me go back to, and we're gonna need these guys in a minute anyways. So come back here, you'll see I've got just some sprites going on here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and grab 3 of these guys, and I'm going to now go and pop. And very bad demonstration. All right, this seems, oh, I'm still running. Yeah, that's probably why. All right, let's stop our code, and let's do that all over again. All right, click, drop. All right, that should have done it. I don't know why that's not working. There we go. Okay, not sure exactly what went wrong there, but as you saw, I can literally just drag and drop assets now into Godot, and it fires off the appropriate importer in this case. So actually, I don't actually want 3D, I want 2D, but that is it. And I'm gonna go ahead and import them, and there they are. And now if you wanna actually use it on another item, you can actually, if it makes sense, you'll see here it doesn't make sense, but you can now drag and drop everything everywhere in Godot. As you saw there, it was a little glitchy on how it worked. This is, you know, a fresh release. We're going to probably see a little bit of improvements over time. And to be honest, I think that's more of a dialogue modality issue than a drag and drop issue, but it's still to the end user. It's a bug. But you can now bring assets directly into the Godot engine, and it will fire off the appropriate guy right here, and you should in theory be able to drag them over as parameters, and they will hook up over here. So I'm going to actually go ahead and try that. We'll get rid of you. Oh, here, I'll get rid of this guy using the right click menu. That's nice to see. So you've got the reparenting option here, but I thought I could reparent via drag and drop as well, so I might have been misleading on that one. But this one is actually, I'm going to show you a twofer here. So another new thing that they've added here is they've extended the functionality of animated. Let's bring it, come on here, animated sprite. An animated sprite didn't make a lot of sense because a lot of the functionality was offloaded into the animator itself. And I didn't really get the purpose of this class for the most part, but now it's actually kind of a simple drop-in. I don't need a full animation playback kind of setup. And if you're interested in more on that, I've done a tutorial on the animation player and, you know, making animated sprites. But what you're about to see is how much more streamlined and easy it is to just create simple animations using the animated sprite. Now you'll see here we got this caution, and it's basically telling us that we need to set up our actual sprite. So let's go ahead and do that. We need our frames. So new sprite frames, we'll edit them. All right, so here we are. And these are our frames. Drop them in. Nice drag and drop functionality going on there. And you can see it is now in here. What you can do is simple things, very simple control now. And it's not nowhere near as complex as the full animation player. But if you just need a simple animated sprite, the animated sprite class is now a hell of a lot easier to use. And again, it nicely illustrates the new drag and drop functionality. So you see I got my 3 frames here of the animation. What I'm going to do is go ahead, keep looping on. We'll set the frame rate down to 2 frames per update. We'll change this animation to walk down. All right, so there's my animated sprite, and we're going to turn playing on, and that is how easy it is to now animate a sprite. So again, there's more functionality in the old way, but this is a lot more intuitive, and this is how I thought animated sprite should have worked all along. So that is certainly a new neat feature that they've added. Now we've also seen some improvements in the script editor. Now I don't actually have any scripts here, so let's go ahead and create one. And yeah, so we'll call you scriptdemo.gd. One thing I should note, that visual scripting you saw is an experimental thing that's not part of this release. I believe they're aiming for Godot 2.2 for that, but it is not part of Godot 2.1. All right, so we're in the new editor now. Now, the worst part is I don't know how much of this actually changed between 2.1 and 2.0. A lot of changes actually happened in the editor, but what we're seeing in the usability here, there's better syntax highlighting, there's improved syntax highlighting, so you know, your different case, if you've got, you know, you can see the ways things are actually highlighted based off what they are, etc. But where we really saw improvements are in the search. So I come down here and I go search. We can now see find. We have this new box right here, and we can do iterative searches. So we've got definitely improved. So I'm going to search for past. You'll see it automatically jumps up here. We can go between. So let's do E instead, so you'll see the various different matches. So vastly improved search functionality built into the code editor. Again, they say better syntax highlighting, smart matching and code completion, and other goodies. So if you want, read the full release notes. There'll probably be a bit more details of what's been added into the editor. But basically, we've just seen, you know, small usability improvements, and again, this new find interface. This is on top of the changes they've done, like the heat mapping they did from the earlier release, the new tabbed interface, etc. So it's a very iterative, you know, small improvements, but definitely an improvement there. And of course, there's also a lot more customizability for what you can do with this particular text editor that we talked about a little bit earlier on. And I think we're kind of getting to the last new feature. If I go back in, let's take a look at this guy that I opened up. So you can see here, I double-clicked him, and I'm down here in the inspector. Well, now we've also got these nice little previews. And the cool thing is, if I had a 3D model, we'd get a 3D model preview down here. If I had a sound file, we'd get a sound file. We'd see the waveform and be able to play it. So there's now an asset preview built into the inspector for your various different assets. So that's a nice little improvement. It works, again, for like 3D models, textures, etc. And that's about it. Those are all the new features that I at least can demonstrate right now, that at least I hopefully haven't forgotten any. Again, nothing earth-shattering, but just maturing features, the things that you need to make your life on a daily basis better. The ability to customize your editor, to go the color schemes that you want, this new asset store, incremental improvements in the code editor, better find, better replace, that kind of stuff, live reload, new profiling functionality, etc. Nothing that's going to, you know, shatter your world, but 1,000 little things that are going to make your daily life better. Now, if you do go to the full release notes for it, there's a lot more detail than, well, actually, I probably went into more detail than the release notes from video, but if you want to read about it, they've covered off each particular thing that's been added. Now, another thing they do is they talk about the future of Godot. Let me just bring that document up over here. So this is the release notes. I'll link these down below as well. But you see, they start to get in here and talk about where they are going in the next version. So this is in 2.2, and we're going to start seeing things such as the visual scripting they're talking about, support for C# as an extension, not as mandatory, high-level multiplayer networking, a new audio engine, and then they're moving towards better 3D in version 3, which I guess makes sense in naming-wise, but that is where we're at. So this was definitely a usability kind of release, and those are kind of the ones you want to see, because in a lot of open source projects, working on usability isn't fun. They're not sexy features, but they're features that make it more, well, usable. That's, I guess, why they're called that. And this kind of stuff that a professional company does, but a lot of open source projects don't, and it's a lot of times their Achilles heel. So it's nice to see Godot maturing in the right ways at the right time, and it's actually maturing very quickly too. So the rate of improvement is actually quite impressive. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found that useful. I hope you enjoyed Godot 2.1. It is available right now for download at godotengine.org. So this isn't something you've got to build yourself. Basically, just head on over here. You can download 2.1 today right there. So that is Godot Engine 2.1. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found that useful. If you do, please do click like. And we do this kind of stuff all the time on the channel. So if you want to hear more about Godot or various other game engines, please do click subscribe. And I hope to see you soon. See y'all later. Goodbye.